Hey guys, what's going on here? William here with another episode for you. I have a guest. His name is Josh Vogel. He is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He is an instructor at Balance Studios. He has a lot of things that he does. He runs a company with his wife, 90 Days BJJ, and another company, Jiu-Jitsu Candles. And he also does his own little thing called the Sloth Report. I highly recommend that. I subscribe to it. It's only $5 a month. He pretty much gives you a lot of details that you may be missing. The micro adjustments, they call it now. Now it's a big thing. I don't even know what that is. It's just everyone's talking about micro adjustments. It's hilarious. But anyway, if you want to learn about some micro adjustments, the Sloth Report, I'm pretty sure it has a lot of that. If you want to delve deeper into your methods and the principles of jiu-jitsu. Our talk is mainly about jiu-jitsu, so if you don't like jiu-jitsu, or if you're not into jiu-jitsu, or it's not your forte, whatever, this conversation may not be for you. We talk a little bit about meditation and a couple other things, but we mainly focus on jiu-jitsu. So if you're all about jiu-jitsu, this episode I hope it's all for you basically. I'm a huge fan of jiu-jitsu. I'm a huge fan of Josh Vogel and his work, and I appreciate him being on, and I hope you guys check his stuff out, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode in general. So without further ado, I bring to you my awesome guest, Josh Vogel. This is Josh Vogel I'm talking to. An amazing. Well, I barely got to roll with him. I rolled with him once, and I just know that his work, the way he teaches, the things that he has lined up for everyone online, what I hear, the word of mouth, that he's a great black belt instructor, and I'm glad to have you on, Josh Vogel.
Thanks, man, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. He's an instructor at Center City Balance Studios. Is there anything else that I'm missing that you would like to mention about yourself?
I'm a mediocre skateboarder.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I'm a terrible cook, and other than that, that's pretty much it.
Did you learn to cook over COVID, like the pandemic stuff?
No, I mean, I've learned a little bit of stuff. Like, my wife Angie spent many years working as a restaurant professional, like in kitchens, doing pastry chef, and then doing savory food as well. And so I've picked up stuff from her a little bit here and there, but for the most part, food is better left untouched by my hands. In general. I mean, there's a couple things I can do okay though.
Yeah, at least you're honest. I mean, do you have like a specialty that you love to cook that you're really good at, or are right at least, that you can touch?
Yeah, I mean, I can do okay with like grilling stuff, like chicken. Just nothing really special. But like, I always feel funny cooking because it's like if I have this food, right? I got a piece of chicken in my hands, and there's the chance of her cooking it, which is, doing it justice a million times more than I could ever do it, and then I do it, and it just seems almost like a waste for me to cook it because it'll turn out okay. Whereas if she cooks it, it's going to be amazing. And so but I don't want to put all the burden of cooking on her all the time, even though I do anyway. But, I try to cook sometimes, and I do okay with chicken is, I guess, the gist of the story.
It's kind of interesting when you say that. It's like, it's kind of like you complement each other with certain things. You're mm-hmm. good at this thing, and she's good at that thing, and you guys just work together. You know what I mean? Like you just find that right sort of balance that you keep scaling over. Like, all right, I'm better at cooking, and you're better at jiu-jitsu or whatever, and then you're skateboarding even.
That's why I love working with her so much at Balance too, because there's certain things in jiu-jitsu that she teaches a million times better than I do, and she understands much more thoroughly than I do because she's put the work into developing those things and really like sussing out all the details and all the problems and how to solve those problems. So even there we make a great team because, I have the things that I'm good at and that I understand well, but I can always outsource to her, which I do a lot with my students. I'll say, like we're getting towards the point where you're going to be working on an Americana from side control, for example. And if you want to go down that route, then I suggest you learn that from Angie, and then you can learn this from me. And then if you want to go learn, it's great because I can always outsource to her when there's things beyond my expertise.
Right.
And so that's most of cooking too.
Yeah. I remember I think I followed both of you guys around the same time, and then she was making bread, and that's like my, that's my, what do you call it? I'm not allowed to eat bread that much, but when I see bread, I'm just like, oh my God, someone's making bread, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know if you know Huda, his restaurant and all that. He's starting to do bread on his Instagram now. Shout out to Huda, his restaurant. I haven't tried the sandwiches yet. Pretty sure you have. I don't know if you have. Have you tried it?
I have. It's like 3 blocks away from Center City, and I still haven't tried it yet.
Damn.
But I got to get over there. And Yehuda, if you're watching this, I promise you I'll go there sometime.
Yeah, soon. and I want to go too. But he puts the bread on there. I'm just like, and I did this myself over the pandemic. I learned how to make sourdough bread, and I was actually inspired by your wife because I saw her doing it. I was like, oh well, because my brain was, you need to be a master at this thing. I don't know what her situation is. If she's really good at it. She looks like she's really good at making bread.
She's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. Her bread looks freaking awesome. I marveled over that. I was like, oh my God, I want to go over there just to buy it. I don't even know her like that. But anyway, so the way I was trying to talk about the complimenting thing, and then you brought that up with how you work with your wife. You trained your wife, didn't you? Didn't you help your wife through her journey through jiu-jitsu, or like how did that come about? Like how she started jiu-jitsu? I want to go back. I want to go to your background too, but I want to talk about Angie a little bit.
To about 17 years ago, and she wasn't really interested in it for a long time. It was just kind of my thing, and she didn't really get into it. And then she gave me a ride to a seminar I was teaching in New Jersey, maybe a little bit over 8 years ago. And she saw it, and she sat there and she was watching everything, and I think just something clicked, and she's like, wait a minute, I could do this. And what was funny was I think she just naturally had a good brain for jiu-jitsu, because even though she had never trained before, she was helping some of the people who were doing the moves, and it was like, like a deep half guard sweep or something like that. Like not something like basic, but something kind of like a little bit more advanced. And she was like pointing out like, no, he said to put your hand there. Like even without training, she just understood it. And so after that, I think that kind of got in her head that, maybe it's something that she would be interested in doing. So she sort of followed up on it, started doing beginners classes, and we did some of the self-defense stuff in private lessons. And then she started training, and and she's become, a great teacher in her own right. And she's developed her own style of jiu-jitsu. And it all kind of started from that point where, she just realized it was something that she could do. And then we put together a game plan for her, and she just put in tons of work and trained super hard, and, and really developed her own way of doing things, which is great.
Right. Would you say that everything you learned throughout your beginning stages, you were able to take from that and apply it to her way of learning, or did you just let her learn her own thing, her own way?
Well, so we, with her, we because she was, I'm more of like an advisor now, but in the beginning she was mainly my student. So what the idea was is that we put together a specific plan that would work for her body type, her personality type. And then it was a very organized process where this is your plan. You're going to do this during open mat. And then she just put in tons and tons of work, implementing her game plan and then troubleshooting it. So she would go to the mat. She would say, okay, I tried that Toriano pass that we worked on, and this person did this, and I was not able to be successful implementing it. And then we would figure out solutions for that problem. and then just keep on building off of that. And so, over time it turned from, it wasn't like the normal process of, go to class, you learn like 40 moves a month, and then you just try a bunch of stuff randomly during an open mat, but it was much more organized than that. And I think that, that that helped her get good really, really quickly. But I think more than anything else, it was her, like, she's super driven and she's got a very good work ethic. So I think she would have gotten good really, really quickly, no matter what, even if it was just like, yeah, just go roll, do stuff. Like, she would have gotten good anyway like that. But I think because of her work ethic and her drive, but I think having an organized process from the beginning with her helped a ton. And I think, what's cool for me about that is that over time, she took that process, she made it her own. And now when she does her own projects and she studies different parts of jiu-jitsu, she teaches me stuff like Americanas, half guard stuff, and she teaches her students really well. And I learn a lot by watching how she's taken that organized process that we implemented at the beginning of her jiu-jitsu and watching her implement that with other people. And so now we put our heads together, and it's like we're like a research team now,
Right, right.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
That
It's
is
the
cool.
organized process was the key to everything, I think, and then
Right.
her work ethic.
And just to give her a quick, what do you call it? I guess a shout out. She is Balance Studios' first female black belt. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Balance Studios first female black belt.
Yeah, she was promoted last year,
Um,
or I remember it was promotion day for me. I think it was around that time. So
yeah, I
that
think it
probably
was over. Babe, when did you get your black belt? Like a year and a half ago?
yeah.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I'm like all lost myself, so I forgot when I got promoted. Yeah.
Well, it's hard too with COVID because it's just like we're in this time warp for the last year where no time
Yeah.
measurements make sense,
Yeah. That's cool. Congratulations to her. Even though that was a while ago, still an awesome thing for her to get to that point. She's the first black belt at Balance Studios, female black belt.
Yep.
And she represents all the the aspiring females to join jiu-jitsu because her work ethic, and they can look up to her and say, yeah, I could do this too.
Yeah.
And this the way she does it. It could be the path that many can look at to say, how does she do it? All right, I can. Yeah, if she could do it, I could do it. Then you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm ignorant to how many female black belts there are, but it seems to be really a lot of black belts out there. So it can be like intimidating for the female to look at that and say, but
it's yeah, I think it's there are a lot more female black belts than there used to be, but there's still definitely a lot more male black belts. And I think that can, from what I understand, that can be pretty intimidating for women coming up through jiu-jitsu. But I think what's again, not to Angie's sitting right here, so I don't want to like seem like I'm like kissing her ass too much.
No,
but,
I know.
but but it really is true. Like what's cool about her is that like she's Balance's first female black belt, but I think what makes a lot of females that come into the school feel very welcome and feel very like comfortable at the school is that she's, for a long time, she's taught a lot of the co-ed classes and some of the advanced classes. So she'll have a female who's never trained before, or even a blue or a purple belt from another school, come in, and they'll see her just being a well-respected instructor by everybody, teaching guys, women, and getting the same amount of respect from everybody. And that's kind of an unusual thing because in a lot of schools, I think women are kind of like, if they do have a teaching role at all, it's usually kids or a women's only group or something.
Yeah.
But she's just an excellent co-ed, normal, advanced class instructor and just part of the normal staff, so there's nothing, she's not stuck in that role of like, okay, you're a girl, you go teach a kid's class, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
When you say co-ed, what does that mean? I'm like,
just men and women.
Oh, men and women. Okay, co-ed
Yeah.
is a mixed class. Got it. That's cool. Yeah, because I don't want to talk about the female only classes thing. That's awesome for them to have their own environment. but it's like I hope that it doesn't divide us. I hope that we continue to encourage women and men to train together, that it's safe. You know what I mean? Not, you're gonna have your men every now and then, or the macho guys that like wanna whatever, but
Yeah.
it takes care of itself. When the instructors are there to look after all their students, and not to kiss Balance Studios ass. I'm wearing a t-shirt saying I love Balance, but they pretty much do a really good job of maintaining the balance. No
Yeah,
pun
I got my
intended.
Balance hoodie on.
We're both kissing their ass then.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, that's cool, man. Props to her for doing that. That's awesome. I'm hoping more, females are encouraged through that in the long run. I'm hoping jiu-jitsu continues, the martial arts, because this COVID thing is kind of like up in the air, the new strains, and it's like worrying me a little bit. Like, oh no, not again. I hope all this shit doesn't, go south or whatever.
From the beginning, COVID's been nuts because it's like for jiu-jitsu people, because you look at COVID and okay, so you got a virus that spreads by being in close contact indoors with people breathing on each other, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like jiu-jitsu was specifically designed to spread, it's like could there be any worse activity that we chose,
Right.
Like we could be playing tennis and we'd be fine.
Right.
But we got to do jiu-jitsu.
And it's an amazing freaking martial art, man. It's like you can't, for me, I can't, I know I'm pretty sure you feel this way. I can't live without it. I need it. Like I want it every freaking time I get to have it. It's like meditation for me. I need it. I want it. I'm going to keep trying my best to take advantage of every opportunity I get to train jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and martial arts in general. But going back to your background, when did you first get introduced to martial arts, or what got you started?
So in 1999, either 1998 or 1999, I started doing kung fu classes in South Philly, and it was in a park, and it was just, I don't even remember, like it was just a bunch of different styles of kung fu, but that was kind of my introduction to it. And then I did that for a few years, I guess from like 98 or 99 until maybe 2003. And then in 2003, I found jiu-jitsu and just fell in love with it instantly. And I was like, all right, this is it,
Right.
It was a big part of it was just the sparring, because when I was doing a lot of kung fu styles, like we would spar maybe once a month. And, for me, that wasn't enough. And then eventually I started doing jiu-jitsu, and we were, it's different now, but when I started, we were sparring from day one. We were rolling, and you just kind of like get that that like you just get in there and you try it out. It's like you don't have to wonder what it's like to ride a bike. You can get on the bike and you can pedal around and you can feel like what it's like to fall down and
right.
So that's kind of what I loved about jiu-jitsu from the beginning.
Not to make fun of kung fu. I love all martial arts, but you don't want to sit there with the invisible bike for 2 years before you actually put it into practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just sitting there and you're just doing this or something. I'm just saying the practice of martial arts. Usually they try to give you to work on form and technique only, and not allow you to see if it works. Like see if it's actually practical.
And that was my issue with it, because like you said, like I think there's a lot of value in there's some value in every martial art. There's something in it for everybody. Yeah. I just don't think that those styles, like I needed a style where I could, like just get on the bike and ride and see what it feels like to fall down in the dirt,
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just thinking about the times, how many freaking times I fell off my bike in jiu-jitsu. Like I fell on my face a bunch of times. I had a couple of scares where I thought I broke my arm and my wrist, and Muay Thai, I thought I broke my ankle. It was like, it's an amazing thing though. Like it humbles you, it humbles you to take care of your body like more. You're like, oh, this thing actually can, disappear. Like I could be, I don't want to misquote Bruce Lee. I could be formless. I could be deformed,
exactly. I could be wristless.
Yeah. Especially with Animal. I don't, his wrist locks.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, So take me back if you can to your process of like learning when you were the white belt. Were you getting smashed every day or every time like what inspired you to not be afraid of getting your ass kicked, so to speak, on the mat? You know.
I think well, so when I first started, my brother and I were training together, and we were only allowed to partner up with each other because we were huge spazzes and we both smelled like cigarettes all the time. So Phil and Rick would
Yeah.
only let us roll with each other.
Oh, okay.
And then eventually, once we had like, so we would roll with each other. And what would happen was, because we were both heavy smokers, we would last about probably 90 seconds and then just go sit on the side of the mat and like dry heave,
Yeah. Yeah.
So like it was like that was the very beginning, like my, and of course we would roll a little bit with other people during class and stuff, but for the most part, like that's kind of like, okay, we would do the techniques and then me and Drew would go roll and then we would just freak out for 90 seconds and then just lay on the side of the mat like like unable to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then over time you kind of assimilate into rolling with other people during open mat, and then you're asking about like what the process of like learning jiu-jitsu was like, or
Yeah. If you want to summarize it, you can talk however much you want to talk with your process, but like from white belt to blue belt to purple, what did you learn maybe from each and every belt, whatever, or when, like me, I learned stop thinking about the belt. Because that was my first thing. I think that's a lot of people's first thing to think about. Oh, I want to get the blue belt. I want to get the blue belt. And then once you realize, you're like, it's not even about the belt, dude. It's about just training, being there, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, stuff like that. Like anything that anyone else can listen to take notes on.
So I think for me, I like to be, with things that I care about, I like to be organized. So in the beginning, I was in love with jiu-jitsu. I wanted to roll all the time, and I was super enthralled with that thing of just getting on the mat. And like, what was cool was you could roll pretty hard, and it wasn't like if you do a striking art, like if I did Muay Thai and we were just sparring all the time, you get busted up pretty quick, like because people hit hard, and like if you're sparring hard all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
With jiu-jitsu, we could spar hard, and I didn't really get hurt very often in the very beginning. A little bit here, a little bit there, but not too bad. So that's kind of all I wanted to do, and I didn't really think about anything else for the first like 6 months. And then once I started to like simmer down with that like love of only rolling, I started to think about how to organize it so I could get better at it. And then what ended up happening there was I originally sucked at everything. And then eventually somehow I think I accidentally armbarred somebody. Like as they were on top of me in side control, I slipped out, I got my knee across the chest, and then I armbarred them. I was like, okay, cool. That's a move that I can do. And then so I started to build off of that. And then I started to figure out, okay, well, I can do the same thing if they're cut passing on me. And then, okay, well, if I try to do it while they're cut passing and they pull their arm out, then I get my close guard. And then from close guard, I can do that same arm bar. So my first introduction to the idea of having a game plan was that kind of organic process of like, I'm just going to roll and super hard and not know what I'm doing and freak out, and hopefully something good happens. And then eventually like, oh, cool, I armbarred someone. And then kind of taking that piece that I could actually do and then building off of it and turning that into the beginnings of an organized plan. So then once I realized, okay, well, I can armbar somebody if I can escape from side control, I can do it during a cut pass, and I can do it from close guard. Then I started to try and do that every time I would roll because I knew I could make that happen. And so what ended up happening over time was that seed of the armbar from bottom of side control turned into a pretty, like, not comprehensive, but it was a pretty well organized plan that I had every time I would roll. And then eventually at blue belt, when I started competing, that was my plan. I would slap hands, I would try to pull close guard, try to armbar over and over and over again. And then that started failing. And so what ended up happening is I had to develop different parts of my game around that. And so you sort of end up with like, I think this happens for everybody where like you kind of gravitate towards things that you're good at. But I always had an impulse to try to make that an organized thing instead of just like freestyling it when I get on the mat.
Mhm.
And then I started to come across some really intelligent thinkers in jiu-jitsu. Like, there were people talking about, game plans and learning processes and curriculums and things like that. And I started to try to apply that to my own jiu-jitsu to see if it could help me get better for competition. And then, I kind of lingered in that zone of like having sort of a game plan from like blue belt and purple belt, but I didn't really understand how to make the most of it or how to like, how to make consistent improvement, like,
Right.
like you do well and then like you stop doing well for a while and you don't really know how to get better.
Right.
And so you like, you just kind of linger in limbo until something happens and then you make a breakthrough and then you get better, but you don't know why or how it happened. Like it's
Yeah.
just sort of like an accident that you got better.
Yeah.
And then I think eventually at brown belt, I started like really buckling down and trying to find like an organized way to build a plan and then improve my training step by step in an organized and measurable way, if that makes any sense. And then that's kind of what I run with since then.
Right. Do you think this is like you find what works for you kind of thing, or is this something that you think that's really beneficial for? I don't know. That's a dumb question. I can't form the question right, but basically, do you think it's what you find what works for you type of thing? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I think that there's like, so I think there's a bunch of different types of things that work. Like there are things that work for you. For example, for me, the arm bar from the bottom, like um, that worked for me because I was fairly flexible. I had really strong legs from skateboarding, like
Right.
growing up skateboarding. And so if I could latch onto somebody's arm with my hips and legs, I could control them pretty well. And I think the armbar sort of organically happened for me. And I was able to reproduce that a bunch of times because of those factors.
Right.
So I think that's one example of something that like I just happened to find a technique that worked well for me. But for example, the X choke from close guard, that didn't work for me at all at that point in time because I had super weak upper body. So I
Yeah.
could grab the collar, but I couldn't finish it
Right.
because I didn't have pulling strength. I had terrible grips and people would just rip out of my chokes all the time. So
Right.
I think most people have things that will naturally suit their body type pretty well from the
Right.
very beginning. And that's some of that stuff's obvious. Like, if your legs are a foot long and they're super thick thighed, you're not going to be triangling people.
Hmm.
But if you're a super tall, lanky person with flexible hips and knees, you'll probably be able to develop a triangle easier than something else. So like, I think your body type plays a part in that. I think your disposition plays a part in that. So some people are naturally super aggressive, and some people can be more passive and kind of like a counter fighter. So I think there's some people that maybe aggressive types might gravitate towards something like guillotine chokes, where you like snap somebody down and wrap their neck up and get after it.
Yeah.
Just as an example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that would be, but then I think there's also something to be said for like, somebody giving you a specific game plan from the beginning of your training and then you putting a significant amount of work in to get good at those things too.
Right. So
You know?
staying on one thing to focus on it until you get better at it, and
Yeah.
you can for as long as you can. You think you should not should, but let's say if I wanted to focus on arm bars for a whole month,
Mhm.
you think that's enough to? It depends. I guess it depends on the person, right? For someone to catch that the concepts of arm bars, should they do more than a month, or is that just like a good enough time frame so that they can move on to the next thing?
So I think part of that depends on your experience level in jiu-jitsu. So for example, like a brand new student, my advice to them would be to focus on developing one technique from every major position and then spend maybe your first year of jiu-jitsu just focusing on that. And then, you're going to pick up stuff here and there organically over time. But I think what happens like for beginning students, I wouldn't say just to focus on like one technique forever for a beginning student, because what ends up happening is you're missing a good opportunity to develop your other skill sets in jiu-jitsu. So if you were like a brand new white belt and I said, you know, William, I want you to focus just on guillotine chokes and that's it, right? Well, you'll probably catch people with the guillotine, but you're not going to develop your back control. You're not going to develop a takedown. You're not going to develop your guard. You're just going to develop the guillotine and then whatever position lets you get to that. But if I told you to focus on one technique from every major position, top of the mount, bottom of the mount, one takedown, top of closed guard, bottom of closed guard, all that kind of stuff, then what that does is it gives you a very clear focus. So when you slap hands with somebody and they pull guard on you, you have one guard pass. And then if you're successful, you're on top of side control and you have one attack from there. If you end up on top of the mount, you have one attack from there. If you get reversed and you're on bottom of closed guard, you have one attack from there. And if you spend your first like 6 months to a year focusing on that, you can make pretty quick progress because you're not doing a million different techniques. And so you don't get that confusion when you're wipe out of like, okay, I'm in the closed guard and I could do an arm bar and a kimura and a triangle and a guillotine and a hip bump sweep and a scissor sweep. And, like, that feeling?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, and you get
It's
paralyzed
overwhelming.
because you have too many options. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you just have, okay, closed guard right away, arm drag, back take, then you don't have to think about it. All you have to do is do that one move and study what happens when you try it, see what the problems are. And then if you can find solutions for those problems, then you can make progress on that one move. And then you can add a second move later on.
Right.
That kind of makes sense?
No, it makes sense to me. Yeah. Because it's funny because, everyone has their own way of doing it. You'll talk to one instructor. He'll say, I heard this from one instructor. He mentioned you have many cups in front of you. You can decide to fill the one cup, or you can decide to fill a little bit of each cup. And you're talking about filling one of each cup. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's I forget what they said. Correct me if I'm wrong. I forget who it is. Henzo Gracie, one of the Gracies. They learned to be good at one thing or whatever. They were really good at the one thing, I should say. And I don't remember if this is right, but just in the guard, and no one could get out the guard or something. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
I think it kind of tickles the back of my head. Like I've heard about it before, but I can't remember what the exact quote was.
Yeah, it's fine. Basically, I was going to ask you, is that if someone can do that, fill just a little bit of cups of all the cups that they have, like all the different positions, is it a problem from them to focus on the one cup eventually, and then they're really good at that one thing? Or
so I think like my point with it's almost like when you go to school and you learn like a little bit of math, a little bit of English, a little bit of, like instead of in the very beginning, as soon as you can talk, they don't force you just, okay, you're going to be a mathematician. I want you to focus on calculus, or even arithmetic. Like it's like, no, you got to learn, you got to learn basic math. You got to learn some English. You got to learn a little bit about history. You got to learn, you got to take some PE classes, and you build a well-rounded fundamental education. But some kids gravitate towards math and some kids gravitate towards the arts, but
that's true.
They all have the same arithmetic skills, the same basic English skills, the same. So that's kind of what I mean with building one technique from every major position in the beginning, is just that it forces you to have at least a direction to go in no matter where you are. And then you start to gravitate towards one position, one technique, and you start to develop that as well. But if that plan doesn't work out, so for example, for me with the arm bar, like I could do that arm bar, but I sucked at the mount. I sucked at escape in the mount. I sucked at, takedowns. I couldn't do anything besides that one arm bar from the guard. But eventually I had to learn all those other skills in order to have like, okay, if I couldn't arm bar somebody from the guard, then I had to be able to do other things,
Right. The the organization of your jiu-jitsu, is that's everything you pretty much just talked about that. Is there more to it than just that? Taking notes, at home? Like, what is a was it an effective way of organizing one's jiu-jitsu?
So I think for me, like, like the example that I was just talking about
Yeah,
was sort of like a beginner's example. Like, okay,
right.
you're a white belt, you got to have something to do. So one move from every major position. And then as you move out of your white belt phase, then at blue and purple belt, you start to specialize a little bit more, I think. And
Mm,
so you start to naturally gravitate towards, you got some blue and purple belts that are super good at back takes and super good at, but they might not be great at guillotine chokes, right?
right.
Or super good at foot locks, but they might have terrible guard passing. And so my idea for organizing your jiu-jitsu is that whatever it is that you choose to start specializing in and developing, like let's say you pick a project like, this for the next 90 days or the next month, you're going to, I want to develop a guillotine choke, right?
Right.
Then the first thing is to understand exactly what you're trying to accomplish, right? So with a guillotine choke, for the variation that I want to learn about, my goal has to be to cut off both carotid arteries in the front of the neck and keep that pressure until the person either passes out or taps, right?
Mm,
So goal setting. And then once you have a goal, then you can start to think, okay, well, now I know exactly what I want to work towards. And now I want to try to find ways to get into that position. I want to try to find, okay, well, now I'm going to do the guillotine from butterfly guard. So I kick the knee out, snap the head down, wrap the neck up. And then once I do that, then there's a troubleshooting. So what are the major problems? I do a guillotine choke and the guy keeps on jumping over my guard to side control every time I do it. So now
right.
I have a problem and then I have to find a solution for that problem. And so let's say I throw my left leg over the back so they can't jump over to my left side and pass my guard, right? Now I got another problem because every time I snap up the guillotine choke, you keep on peeling my hands off your neck.
Mm,
So now I got to figure out a solution for that problem. And so it becomes this thing of you set a goal and then you figure out exactly what you want to accomplish with that position. And then you start clarifying what are the problems that pop up on your way to being successful with the guillotine choke. And that would be one way to organize your training.
right. And I take notes during class, but I
Yeah.
just do it just because I like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm not going to remember these things, but at least I'll have the notes that I can go back.
Yeah.
Uh, what would you recommend for someone to, let's say they don't remember all these different, they roll with like 10 people,
Mm-hmm.
during that open mat, do you recommend at that time, write the notes down now or once you get home? Like, I guess it varies, but
Yeah, I think like, so for example, you mentioned that you like to take notes. So I would say it's really hard to take notes like during open mat, right? Because like, you're rolling
yeah,
and then, somebody else comes up and they're like, hey, you want to roll? And you're like, yeah, hold on, let me take these notes real quick.
right, right.
And, but I think one way to do it would be to develop. So you want to develop almost like an internal video camera in your
Mm,
head. And what that means is when you roll, so let's say you and I roll, right? And your goal is to try to get me in a guillotine choke as many times as you can. Then you get me in a guillotine and I hand fight. And then I get out of it. We roll around a little bit more. You guillotine me and I tap. And then we start again. And then you guillotine me, but this time I jump over your guard to side control. And then we roll again. You guillotine me and I tap, right? So at the end of the open mat, if you had that internal video camera rolling, you won't remember the entire 5-minute roll that we had, but you'll remember that I got out of your guillotine choke by hand fighting and by jumping over to side control.
mm,
And so at the end of the open mat, you could take just quick notes like, okay, I did 6 rolls, 6-minute rounds. When I roll with Josh, he peeled my fingers off of the guillotine and he also jumped over to side control. So you write down whatever problems you ran into. And then I rolled with Rick and I tried to guillotine him and I couldn't even get my arms around the neck. I couldn't get his head low enough, right?
mm,
And then I rolled with let's say I roll with Angie and I tried to guillotine, but she tucked her chin and she passed my guard with an over under pass, right? And I couldn't even get her head in the right spot. So you write down 1 or 2 problems you came across, and if you remember more than that and write them down, then fantastic. But for each training session, just 1 or 2 problems is good enough.
it's good enough. Yeah. And when you get those
Yeah, because then you don't get overwhelmed, and then it gives you.
No, go ahead.
What's that? I was saying like then you don't get overwhelmed either, because if you just write down everything that happened during an entire open mat, you're gonna fill up pages and pages and pages
Yeah.
of stuff. You know.
Yeah. Sorry, just wanted to keep track. Yeah.
It's okay.
No, what do you call it? So that's the blue belt, purple belt stage, and then as you get to a brown belt, it's probably similar, or is there something else that you have to work on with organizing your jiu-jitsu?
I think like so for blue and purple, like I think it's expanding on what you did at white belt, like filling out your entire game plan of every major position, and then you also start to specialize, like we talked about, and then again, it's not super rigid as far as like, okay, this is what you do at blue belt, this is what you do at purple.
Right.
But like roughly, most blue and purple belts tend to want to explore jiu-jitsu and like try a bunch of stuff out, and then they start specializing at some point. I think at brown belt, it seems like people start to prune the branches off of that tree a little bit. Like at purple belt, I want to do De La Hiva guard, I want to do reverse De La Hiva, and I want to do guillotines, and I want to do head and arm chokes, and I want to do foot locks, all the foot locks, and I want,
Yeah.
And then at purple belt, I think you start to prune out a lot of the stuff that works for you and doesn't work for you.
Right.
And you start to really cement like what your A game is and what the stuff that you're best at,
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you'll see at brown belt is, and at black belt too, is that you start to weed out the stuff that's just like really getting you in trouble and not working for you at all. And then you start to do like little mini projects. Like, for example, you have a good bottom of half guard with an underhook, right? And let's say by brown belt, you can sweep most of your training partners with it. And if you don't sweep them, you usually know what went wrong. And if you do sweep them, you end up on top of side control. And then from side control, you step over to the mount and you go for a head and arm choke. And so you have a clear path of what you're going to do during your rolls. But then I think you start to expand on that a little bit, right? And you start to like explore the borders of that. So if my game is to get an underhook and come out and try to sweep my partner to side control, then I start to explore, okay, well, if they whizzer and I can't stop the whizzer, then let me see what this position's about, right? So then I go to like a dogfight position, and you start to explore the borders of that. Like, well, what if I try to sweep? What if I try to guillotine? What if I try to footlock? And I think at brown belt, it seems like it's pruning the stuff that doesn't work out of your game, but I think it's also playing around with the edges of your game. Does that make any sense?
No, it makes sense to me perfectly. Yeah. Well, especially for me, because I that's what I do with life in general. I don't do that, not yet with jiu-jitsu. I haven't, cut any branches out. I'm growing all these branches all over me. I don't even know what I want to do yet. I like to back take. It's one of my favorite things to do. And De La Hiva, I'd like to do inverted for some reason, because I like to roll around, literally roll around.
Well, that works with the back takes really well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know anything about that. Like just roll around into the back take. I don't know. That would be awesome to learn that.
Yeah.
But because I'm more of I'm doing the freestyle stuff. Like I don't. It's like I dabbled in everything. White belt, I was like so focused on defense, and then and blue belt, I was like, all right, I'm good. I think I'm good. So far, at least, I'm defending against all these white belts, whatever. Now the blue belts, I'm trying to like work my way to defend against them, but now I need to attack, find a way to attack now, take advantage, and I'm starting to see the benefits of like putting in more time, because then you get way more comfortable. And not to talk bad about the white belts, but because I have a white belt mindset, whatever. Now I'm starting to see the newer people are still, they're in the beginning stages, and you're like, oh, you're seeing all these holes in their game, and I'm like, oh, so that's what they see in me. So when I roll with a purple belt, what I see in the white belt, whatever, that's what the purple belt sees in me as a blue belt, whatever. It's just cool to see the phases. I don't know if I'm right or accurate with that, but for my
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You see your place in the like on the ladder of understanding stuff.
Yeah, and then black belts are just like, they already know what they're doing, like 10 moves. I see what you're doing. I was like, what am I can't do anything, man. Just let me do one thing. And they're like, go ahead, you do that one thing. And then I do it, and I'm over there somewhere getting my arm tangled up Rick is so good at that, man. Like convincing me to go over there, and I'm like, I'm not taking that bait. But then I'm like, I'm gonna go over there, and he wants me to go over there too. It's like, it's amazing. It's
Yeah,
like,
he's a master of compelling people to do things that they don't want to do on the
y-
mat.
yeah, and you learn right away. You're like, yeah, not doing that again. That I
Yep.
know of. He's probably gonna get me to do it again. Um, yeah, it's cool, man.
What's funny with him, like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, you could talk.
Well, I was gonna say the funny thing about Rick is like, it's interesting because he's so good at, it's like you said, he gets you to do things better. I know better than to like, leave my left elbow out because he's been kimuring my left arm for 17 years. I know what's going to happen, but he finds a way to grab your wrist and then you try to pull back and your elbow pops out and you're like, damn, I did it again. I didn't even want to do that. And I knew I was going to do that. And I knew I didn't want to do that, but he still got me to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like that. It's a different level of, it's a different type of control.
Yeah. Yeah. I just appreciate like all black belts that do different things. And it's like you're especially with the gi, they're masters at this chess game. And it's like, yeah. I wanted to ask you, this is kind of going off subject. I wanted to really cover the organizing jiu-jitsu thing. Is there anything more you want to talk about in regards to organizing your jiu-jitsu?
No, I mean, I think,
Everything's falling apart behind me.
it's
cool.
For dramatic flair, right?
Yeah, right. Ooh, we got to bring it back. Oh man.
No, I think I think there's a lot of layers to organizing your jiu-jitsu, but I think I think is that what you're looking for is you don't have to get good at all of the jiu-jitsu. You just have to create your own jiu-jitsu by building a simple game plan. And then like, you don't have to learn 50 million different, it's like you were saying about the Gracies, like they were talking about close guard and keeping it simple and hyper specialization. And that's kind of what I mean with, having a plan. Instead of having like, okay, I'm going to slap hands and I could play butterfly guard, or I could play half guard, I could play reverse tail heaver, I could play close guard. It's more like you want to take some time to develop like, okay, I'm going to slap hands, pull half guard, underhook, come out, try to take the back. They fall onto your side. I step over to the mount, try to head and arm choke. They turn, I take the back. And that's a very simple path, right? And it's an organized path. And then when that path fails, just learning how to troubleshoot and how to find problems and how to solve those problems instead of, like I want to pull half guard, but I couldn't do it. So now let me do something different. And then you end up with a million different techniques, but you can't really get good at any of them because you can't put enough time into studying each technique. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's kind of a rough idea of what's going on.
So you're kind of like driving and, people get in the way, the obstacles, anything that, and you go off course like, or you're riding a bike, so to speak. I don't want to stick with that. And, you kind of get distracted with so many things. And as long as you're sticking to that path consistently, you're going to get to the end and then realize, okay, so all that's back there, I learned from all my mistakes and errors. Now I got to here is because I kept being consistent with this path that I was trying to create for myself. And if summarizing?
Yeah. So for example, like what you were saying about how you like taking the back and then you also like doing inverted techniques, one idea would be to take those two things and then you mix them. So how do I use inverted techniques to take the back? And then once I take the back, what do I, how do people escape? So I get on the back, I get a seatbelt grip, and they either roll belly down or they get their back to the mat. So how do I solve those problems? And then what is my goal? So for example, if we go back to like riding the bike, it's not just getting out there and riding a bike, but it's where do I want to ride my bike to? Right. So like I want to go to Wawa on 20th and Market and I'm at 21st and Chestnut, right? So I got to ride my bike down Chestnut Street, make a left, and then go to Wawa. And if there's a detour, then I'll go down Ionic Street or whatever, or I'll go down a different way. But you have a clear destination, and then you have a clear series of paths to get you there, and then you troubleshoot. So when there's a detour, you know how to get around that detour, and you can still get to Wawa, get a chicken strip sandwich with pickles on it,
Yeah.
lettuce, tomato, onions, whatever.
Right. Yeah. I haven't been to Wawa in a while. I just get their jalapeno pretzel.
That sounds kind of good.
Yeah, I used to love their shepherd's pie, man, but they stopped making that.
I never tried, that's the first I've heard, but I think I'm getting hungry.
Yeah,
But I can't cook anything.
You gotta ride your bike to Wawa now,
That's
or
true.
wherever you make it. It's snowing. I forgot it's snowing, so that's a interesting path you gotta take. I wanted to talk a little bit about your Sloth Report that you do. You want to introduce that to the listeners, what that is, and how'd you get that started? What inspired you to start it?
So with the Sloth Report, I think I started it. I'm on issue 87 or 88 right now, and it's once a month. So that was like, I think I started it 88 months ago. I don't know how many years that is. That's like 5 or 6 years or something. But I think I just started it because originally I wanted to start putting out instructional techniques, and because some of my and partially because I wanted to share instructional techniques and sort of some of my ideas about instruction in jiu-jitsu, and then partially also because I wanted reference material for my students. So it started off as just like, okay, well, here's my approach to guillotine chokes, and here's some philosophical ideas I have about that. And it wasn't very organized. And then over time, it got a little bit more organized. I could definitely do a much better job with it, but I think I'm getting better at, I think the thing that it's not just I'm putting out like whatever armbar I like to do. It's more that I'm trying to put out organized. I hate to use the word systems because everybody's talking about systems these days, but I'm trying to put out a more systematic or organized approach to the jiu-jitsu that I'm teaching, so that the people that subscribe to it can check that out, but also so that, for example, if I'm teaching closed guard in my group class, my students can refer to the Sloth Report issues for reference material.
Right.
And then also it's cool for me because I like to revisit stuff a lot. So for example, 5 years ago, I taught a series on guillotines, and then I taught it again 3 years ago. And then probably a year from now, I'll teach another series on guillotines, and I get to see, like now I have much better solutions for the problems that I came across 5 years ago than I did 3 years ago. And I get to see how, like I have like a record of my own progress teaching. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah, because I subscribed to your Sloth Report because I was like, I'm not going to be able to go to Center City to learn from Josh. So he has this online thing. Might as well check it out and, subscribe. And I love it.
I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, I love what you have there. So I'm like, all right. It's just I need to I got so many things that I like to do, and I have to organize that itself to organize my jiu-jitsu. Because I agree with you. I like the organization approach to it. I had to learn how to organize my, the podcasting and everything that I love doing. I love too many things. So I had to learn how to weed out some things like video gaming. So, all right, let me cut that a little bit so I can put more time to learning what I want to learn, which is martial arts and philosophy and things that I'm studying and researching. But yeah, man, it's like your work on Sloth Report, it's exactly what I needed. Because you do you explain, and then you have the video. I can go back and rewind to see what you're talking about and try it myself when I actually go into training. And again, I love your philosophy. I love your way of trying to structure or organize jiu-jitsu so that we can gather that data better, more effectively, rather than just, all right, well, I just learned 60 new techniques in this whole month. What do I want to do? I don't know. I'll do whatever comes to mind, and I'll just do it. Yeah.
But it sounds like you're the same mindset. Like it sounds like you have a similar approach with your interests, like you said, with philosophy and the podcast and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, I think, because it sounds like you're like me. You do a bunch of different stuff, and I think the only way to get all that stuff done is to be organized about it.
Yeah, like organizing what time or what day you do it and your focus and whatever. Yeah. And you have to sacrifice some other things to be able to do it. I'm also a parent, so it's like I'm like like trying to balance everything, man. Like I'm learning, but this is what I got to do. But regardless, I love it. So you do that, and you also do. You have this 90-day BJJ thing coming up. When is that? When are you gonna do that? Release that for the public?
So,
And what is it about? What is that? To explain it. Sorry.
So no, it's okay. So 90-day BJJ is a thing that it's a company that my wife and I just started, and the premise is that we want to be able to organize people's jiu-jitsu, but in a way where like you don't have to wonder what you're working on that week. It's a training plan for jiu-jitsu. So there's already a lot of training plans out there for like, if you want to put on muscle, here's a 6-week program, 6-week abs or whatever, like, but there's really nothing that I'm aware of that is like that for jiu-jitsu. So, and this is something that I've been using for myself for years, and Angie uses, and, we have students that use, 45, 90, 120-day programs, and with varying degrees of organization, but it's, we wanted to start actually releasing it more and more to the public, hopefully by spring. And the basic gist is like, if there's something, let's say you want to get better at your inversions to back take, then what our goal would be you contact us, we give you a plan that'll tell you what to work on in week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, etc. And it'll give you simple goals to accomplish, a simple way to track your progress, and then of course customer support, if you have questions about how the program works, stuff like that. So just trying to make jiu-jitsu as organized as possible, but in a programmed kind of way, like a calendar almost.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. I hope you get, do really good with that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'll put that. Of course, I do what I do. I share your work, so I'll share that on the Instagram and whatever else I could share it on.
I really appreciate you doing that. Yeah, I saw you were sharing some of our stuff before, and I really appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, no problem, man. You also run your Jiu-Jitsu candle company with Angie.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there. Anything you want to talk about with that is what inspired you to do that, or is that just something Angie wanted to do, or you guys wanted to do? I mean,
it's such a weird random thing, because we were just sitting around, and with the Jiu-Jitsu Candle Co., the candle company, we were just sitting around, and like Angie has always liked to buy candles, and when she buys them, I like to smell them. Yeah. I didn't even realize, I was just like, I never thought about candles before, but we've always had candles around the house. They smell good, and you just never really think about it. And then we were sitting there one day, and we were like, what if we just made what if we just started making candles? And, part of it was that, the candles that we were buying were fairly expensive, and we wanted to well, if we make our own candles, we could save a couple bucks. And then we were like, wait a minute, let's make jiu-jitsu candles. Mm-hmm. And so we got into that. And then, again, with Angie, it's crazy because, and she's still here, and she's laughing because I'm kissing her ass again.
That's your wife, man. You kiss her ass all you want,
Nah, but
I kiss my wife's ass all the time, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but what's crazy is like she, we talked about it, and like we were like, we should make some candles. And then like 3 days later, she had like 50 pounds of wax showing up at the front door, and she like knew how to make candles, and she just ran with it. And I help out sometimes, but she does the majority of the work. She does all the design work. Like the reason they look so cool is because, she's figured out how to use all the computer programs to do design. And, she's like, I mean, I'll like wick jars, and I'll like, do like some of the more like mindless kind of tasks sometimes. But she does all the creative stuff, and she makes the majority of the candles. And, I don't even know what to say about it. They just turned out really awesome. And cool. What's cool about them is that, we make them all, they're all handmade. Yep. And they're also really good candles. Like they're not just like, it's not like we're just pouring wax into a jar and going, oh yeah, this will be funny to say about jiu-jitsu. Like here's a white belt candle. Like they're actually legit good candles, which is which impresses me about Angie again. So.
That's cool, man. Again, I just wanted to put that out there so that people could check that out.
I
Um,
appreciate it. JujitsuCandles.com.
cool. Is there anything else you want to talk about in regards to jiu-jitsu? That would give you the mic if you want to talk, just anything you want to talk about, regardless.
Yeah, I think that I think that jujitsu is starting to. I think there's so many good resources now for like learning organized jujitsu. Like there's John Danhurst instructionals, and a lot of his students are putting out cool stuff. And one of the coolest things I think about jujitsu now is that like when I started, there was sort of an it wasn't an organized systematic approach, but there was like you know there was some structure to the learning, but it
Yeah,
wasn't really like well developed yet. And I think one of the coolest things now is that there's so many good thinkers in jiu-jitsu, and there's so many clear thinkers, and there's so many people who are doing such a great job of like creating like just systems out of techniques and footlocks and kimura traps and back attacks and troubleshooting all the problems. And I just think the level of thinking in jiu-jitsu has gone up so much. And I don't know. I think it makes it a really cool time to be around in jiu-jitsu.
right. I agree. And I feel like I'm late to the game, but I still feel happy and privileged to be able to do it right now, regardless.
Yeah,
Cause I'm like 32 already. I got kids, and I'm like, like I wish I had more time to train, but I take advantage anytime I get it, regardless.
but you know what
Uh,
though? I got a lot of respect for that because I know. I mean, I don't have kids, but I know a lot of people who have kids, and who do jiu-jitsu, and I know it's not an easy thing to do.
yeah, yeah,
So
it's
it's
still,
it's it's cool that you still make the time to do it, and
yeah,
it's cool of your family to support you doing that.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I think they honestly, I'm joking, but I'm not. They honestly have no choice but to support me because for me, it really helps me, man.
yeah,
As a great stress reliever. It's everything think mentally speaking and physically. It helps me. And my wife
yeah.
knows, and this is the most I've ever been productive in my life. It started with jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, and it just encouraged me. It's something about jiu-jitsu, and I want to include Muay Thai too, but it's something about martial arts in general that it just it just changes you. It makes you want to do better. It makes you want to improve. It gives you discipline. All the basic fundamentals about what martial arts does for you.
That's a
Um,
cool way to put it because it's like I think you know yeah, I think you're right. Like I never thought of it that way, but like there's so much about jiu-jitsu and just martial arts in general that make you like if not for jiu-jitsu, I would have never been interested in reading about like sport science
yeah,
or like philosophy or anything. I would have just like I'd probably just still be skateboarding and falling down and whacking my head on the ground and not really thinking about that kind of stuff. But
right.
like it's crazy where you can go with it. You can get into jiu-jitsu and it'll lead you to be interested in it just gives you like a vehicle to explore all kinds of different interesting things about the world.
Yep. It's cool that I wanted to ask you real fast. We don't have to delve into it, but what did you pick up with philosophy to that matches with martial arts or jiu-jitsu? Is there something that you can? I don't want to put you on the spot, but whatever you can think of that philosophy and martial arts connects with you. This is just
um
the yeah. Go ahead.
so there's I think there's philosophy in the sense of like specific philosophers I haven't dug really deeply into, but
Mm,
I think more like thinking about as a kid I was really into like Eastern philosophy and like Taoism, Buddhism. You read about
yeah.
all that kind of stuff, and I think that had a lot of influence on me when I was younger, but I still read a lot about that kind of stuff, and just different forms of Buddhism. And I've always been interested in meditation and different forms of meditation. So from that perspective, that type of philosophy has, there's parts of it that influence my jujitsu. I haven't gotten into like, Western philosophers, like, in an academic sense, like Wittgenstein and like those kind of guys or anything. But like, I think more thinking about like, well, what is jujitsu? What's the point of doing this? How do
Right.
I, like from
No,
that perspective?
yeah,
I guess it
asking
sounds
the
kind of vague.
no, that makes sense for me. Like it's you're taking a philosophical approach regardless. It doesn't. I don't really. I'm not. I wasn't. I'm sorry. So I'm like, bro. I'm vague with my when I talk about philosophy because I'm not talking about the academic side. I'm talking
Yeah.
about just life in general. Everything to me that gives you wisdom, gives you an understanding of something, and it's philosophy to me. So if you're learning jiu-jitsu, you're learning a move or a technique, and then you put all this work and ethic behind it, and you learn, oh, wait a minute, I was really determined, or I was motivated, or you learn how your mind changes you into doing these
I
things
see what you mean. Yeah,
through
yeah,
philosophy. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how I think. I'm like, I'm away from the academic stuff and being a professional philosopher.
yeah.
I consider myself a philosopher, but I don't say academically because I don't have a philosophy degree or anything like that. But like I
No, I
consider,
think I get what you're saying.
yeah, um,
Yeah, I think like, maybe the I think I take the whole organizing your jiu-jitsu and problem solving thing, and I think that has influenced, like that's influenced my life, and then I think that thinking has also influenced my jiu-jitsu, so it goes back and forth. So I think if I had to pick a philosophy that I believe in very strongly with jiu-jitsu, and then also um, I feel very strongly about with my life, it's organizing and critical thinking and problem solving.
right,
And so I try to take that, put that into jiu-jitsu, take that out of jiu-jitsu. I plug it into my skateboarding.
yeah,
I try to let those things influence my life in a lot of ways.
yeah, and you could do that with a lot of things,
Yeah.
cooking, meditation, candle making,
Yeah.
anything. So that's what I do for myself with the meditation thing.
Hmm.
I meditate quite often now, and it's thanks to jiu-jitsu. It like motivated me to. I don't know what happened. I don't know what kicked in my mind that I should meditate every more often. And
What kind of meditation do you do?
mindfulness meditation is
Oh, okay.
I think it's yapasana or vipassana
Yeah.
meditation. Yeah, so you just there's different levels of it, but the main thing I do is I learn how to let all these thoughts go by. So I use that with jujitsu. So whenever I get, someone's on top of me squashing me,
Yeah, yeah.
I just breathe. And I'm the only one. I sound like a flat tire in the in the mat. Someone joked about it, and I heard someone, "There was a flat tire in here." I'm like, "Sorry, I was just breathing funny." But I just use that to breathe and not let myself panic and tap from being overwhelmed by someone making me feel claustrophobic or whatever. I just turn my
That's
head,
awesome.
yeah, stuff like that. There's things
Hmm.
that I meditate while I roll.
Hmm.
So whenever I'm rolling with someone, I don't just you go for the move and then that's it. I feel what they do, so I can feel every body part, their leg and their arm, so I can tell when they're gonna go for something. I can
Hmm.
predict. My mind, my consciousness, whatever. Your brain is predicting all these things while you're rolling with someone, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So it's like
Yeah.
it goes into this crazy state of flow, and you're able to just roll with it, and you're like, oh yeah, boom. And your method, I'm not sure if you flow, but if you have that
Hmm.
flow state of mind, but you seem to be very precise. Like, I don't know. I could be wrong, but you seem to be
No, no.
precise. Like you try to go with this move that you're going to Wawa, and then
Yep.
there's that arm. You're like, nope. Let me go do what I got to do to get to Wawa. Is that
Yeah.
yeah?
Well, it's funny because do you so with Vipassana, like, have you followed like Sam Harris at all, or
Yeah, I'm a big
like
fan of his. Yeah.
yeah, so like how like he's one. I do some. I've dabbled in like that style of mindfulness meditation, and like I've used his app, and like I've read a bunch of books, and I've practiced that kind of stuff for a while, and I see exactly what you're saying with how you can use it on the mat like that, And one of the things that I like about his style, and then the way that one of his teachers, Joseph Goldstein, talks about it, is they use this technique called like mental noting, where you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on, these are the sensations that I'm feeling, right? And you have a thought in your head, and then you say thought, right? It pops into your head, and then it's gone. And then, there's an itch on my nose, and like you mentally note it. And so that's something that I think I try to do a lot on the mat, almost like you're self-coaching when you're on the mat. So like I'm rolling, and I notice that I tend to get distracted and want to do things outside of what I'm supposed to be working on. Or sometimes I'll get angry when I'm rolling, or sometimes I'll get, upset if, like, let's say I get swept on my guard pass and I can't get out. And then you got that pressure on top of you and you're like, oh, fuck, I can't breathe. And you start to like panic a little bit.
Yeah.
Like going through that process of like mentally noting like, okay, this guy's heavy. Breathe, slow down, get your arms back in, get your elbow back to your ribs, underhook, get to your side, peel the leg. Like doing that technique of like noticing and mentally noting what you're experiencing, and then using that to kind of like help talk yourself off the ledge a little bit and talk yourself back into doing what you're supposed to be doing is one way that style of meditation gets into my jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It sounds like you do a real similar thing. Like it's just that same like observing and being aware of what's going on. And that's like the same thing as that video camera thing we were talking about.
Right. The video notes, right. So two things. I'm gonna go over this one, I guess. It's the same thing anyway. I got angry to one time because someone got me my arm. First of all, he was really good. And it wasn't his fault that my arm nearly got ripped off. He just did it so fast and he was so good that he nearly, he went past the part where your joint, can, I don't know much about the what do you call it? The cords.
The anatomy.
I don't know the anatomy of your body, but I know that there's something in there that popped and I felt it. I was like, ouch. And I got really angry because I was just like, no, I'm not going to let this guy toy me like he just did. And my ego was getting the best of me. And I was mindfully aware of this. But I let it happen because I wanted to test it out because I'm trying to tweak and understand. And you may have a better understanding of this. I'm trying to tweak and understand the flow of being aggressive and being with how you control what the other person is doing. So if they're being aggressive, I usually like a white belt that's spazzy. Go ahead, I'll just let you tire yourself out, and then I'm taking your back, and then I'm gonna choke you and do what I want to do. Usually I go for the lapel choke and I go across and I do either the bow and arrow choke or I'll just take their back and try to get the regular rear naked. But the better guys that are still aggressive, I can't. It's hard for me to do that. It's hard for me to. So it's like I try to match their level of aggression because if I'm playing the feather and they're the hammer, it's like it doesn't. I don't know. You have a better understanding because I rode with you and you were the feather the whole time. You weren't. I don't know if that's a good way to explain how you roll.
No, it makes sense.
You were just so light and delicate, and I was just like I felt like I was tight and stiffened, and you still the way you rolled, you controlled me still. And I was just like, huh. I was like, it was interesting. But my main question is that something that I should should I match their level? If they're being the hammer or the rock, if I'm trying to be the feather, so to speak, in that instinct, like I'm trying to keep the way I roll. Is there a way to that, or is this something I'm going to learn gradually as I continue? I don't know if that's
No, that's a great question.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's super relevant because a lot of people, and so for example, I have a bad temper, right? So
same.
one of, right. And then you can feel it like rising up sometimes when you're rolling, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, what I've noticed is that when I start to get irritated, and then I can feel my temper flaring up a little bit. And then I go from being in control to getting aggressive, and then I get more aggressive. And then there's a certain point where in the past it's gotten out of control, right? And there's like a zone somewhere in the middle where like I'm pretty mellow, and then I start to get irritated, but I'm still effective. I can still do what I want to do, but then I start to get mad, and then I get real pissed, and then I stop being effective, and I start getting sloppy, and I get swept, and everything, and then I'm mad that I got swept, and you end up in this like emotional like snowball effect. And so I think that doesn't always happen to have to happen with anger, but what can happen is like you slap hands with somebody and they're coming after you super hard, and so you go, oh fuck that, I'm coming after you hard, and then you start going at it with each other, and then you both get kind of hype and things get out of control, and you both get real sloppy, right? And either somebody gets injured, somebody gets mad, or you just get irritated at yourself that you lost control of your technique. So I think the trick is to treat it the same way that you would treat like think about it like a discussion almost. Like you ever watch Sam Harris do like debates with people?
I listened to one recently with Jim Newman on the
Okay.
app, and Jim Newman and him were kind of bumping heads or whatever. And it's funny because I talked about that in my last one of my videos on Instagram about that. But yeah,
Yeah, so the idea is like, generally you see somebody like, a Sam Harris having a debate with somebody or having a discussion, and a lot of the time, he's not always right about everything, but he's pretty well informed in general. And he doesn't tend to like, I've never seen a debate where he's like screaming at the other guy
oh yeah,
or hurling insults or using inflammatory rhetoric. Like he usually stays pretty calm, keeps pretty fact based, and tries to be more correct than the other person rather than being more emotional than the other person. And I think that's kind of the thing with jiu-jitsu, is that you want to try to treat it like, okay, somebody's coming at you hard, you have to be assertive, because if you turn into a feather when somebody's coming at you super aggressive, if you both know the same amount of jiu-jitsu, you're going to get smashed, right? But if somebody's coming at you super aggressive and they and you come at them super aggressive, and you both know about the same amount of jiu-jitsu, then whoever is more well conditioned is going to usually get ahead. Like for me, for example, like somebody comes at me hard, if I come back at them hard and they're like 20 years old and they're like an MMA fighter and they jump rope for 6 hours a day, like I'm going to get tired pretty quick. And then I'm going to be stuck there on bottom of side control, wishing that I didn't get all hype with them.
hmm
But if I can focus on being assertive, but not overly aggressive, and staying calm and trying to do the correct things in the correct moment, then usually I'm more effective than I would be if I got just as hype as them. That makes sense?
yeah, it makes sense, right? So yeah,
So it becomes like, if you treat jiu-jitsu, if you treat technique and understanding how the techniques work and how they link to other techniques and doing the right things at the right time as knowing, facts, and if you were arguing with somebody, you'd want to know like, the facts of your side of the case and how they're likely to respond to those facts, and then having clear rebuttals for their counters to you.
Hmm.
Then you can argue more effectively and you can be assertive, but it doesn't do you any good to be aggressive with them.
Right,
So in jiu-jitsu, you slap hands with somebody, and for example, you mentioned that when we rolled, you felt like I was kind of like light or like a feather.
yeah,
And that was only possible because I've been doing it for longer than you have.
no, yeah,
But there's going to be a certain point where your skill is going to get better and better and better. And when we roll again, I won't be able to be as relaxed. I'll have to be more assertive, but we're both, we'll both be able to have a strong technical match where you say something and I try to rebut it with a factual statement, and then you rebut my rebuttal with another factual statement, and you say, well, what about this? And I say, well, what about this? And then we
yeah,
have a discussion back and forth, and whoever knows more jiu-jitsu will have an advantage in that battle. But
yeah.
it's not like, does that kind of make sense? I
No,
don't know if I'm using a good analogy or
no,
not.
I love that analogy because I think I used it before, thinking about how I said it a couple times. I said jiu-jitsu is basically an argument between both bodies. Whoever has the most effective jiu-jitsu and the facts understood, you'll see the difference between the other person who thinks they know, but they don't,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you can't
Yeah. And then
argue with
usually,
jujitsu. Yeah, go ahead.
no, and then, that it's like you said, like you can't argue with jujitsu. So like what you'll usually see is if somebody doesn't have a good answer for what you're doing, then they tend to replace that good answer with aggression, right? So like you're trying to sweep me and I don't know how to counter your sweep. So I get real aggressive and I try to sprawl real hard and I try to like, break your grips, but if I have a good answer for it, you try to sweep me and then maybe I stuff the head and whizzer and try to put you back on your back. And then we have a more assertive but controlled battle instead of like this hype war between us.
Yeah. So it's more like a chess debate in jiu-jitsu, like depending on,
Yeah,
yeah,
in
I love
sport
that.
jiu-jitsu, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think fighting's probably different, but
Yeah. No,
in
yeah, I'm not,
sport
yeah.
jiu-jitsu,
Right. Jiu-jitsu in general, just jiu-jitsu, that's it. Not MMA or,
yeah.
yeah. That's cool, man. I didn't even think, I thought of that, the body thing, but you just like gave me more of a, like as soon as you mentioned Sam Harris, I thought of, what's his name? The other guy. He's Canadian. Trying to remember. Him and Sam Harris got into a huge
Oh,
debate.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, they got to a heated debate. You saw
Yeah.
the difference, the dynamic difference between the two. How they were both really, really. I don't know if their egos got the best of them or what, but
Got a little heated, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But it's interesting with jiu-jitsu. It's the same thing. It's the same concept where you don't want to let your ego just take over, because then you won't let your jiu-jitsu do the talking. Now your ego is messing you up.
Yeah, and you can turn it, you turn it up. I mean, there's times where you have to turn it up somewhat, but there's that limit. As long as you stay in that zone of like, I can't be too chilled out, but I can't get too crazy either. But there's that zone where you can be like alert, assertive, effective. But then when you start to creep to the edges of that zone, that's where things start to fall apart.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. You got me when I didn't know you meditated. That was a question I usually ask on this podcast, and I just felt bad because the time. But do you practice often still, or you just like you just dwindle still on it, the meditation?
I go through phases where like right now I do it maybe once a week, but then there's some times where I'll do it every single day. Like I try to set a goal of, if I'm doing it consistently, I want to give myself at least 10 minutes, because I know that like if I can do 10 minutes twice a week, then usually that 10 minutes will turn into 15 or 20.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and it's pretty easy to commit to 10 minutes a week or 10 minutes every other day or something. But then I'll go through phases where I slack and I don't do it. And I can feel myself kind of like, the benefits of it start to fade a little bit. And then I'm like, damn, I got to start meditating again,
Yeah, it.
But not to be rude, but I got to head out in a couple of minutes. I hope you don't mind.
No, that's fine. We can end it. We can wrap it up with the last few questions. Can I do a quick? I usually do the last 5 questions, and you can answer real quick.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let me get those questions. They're in my face somewhere. Oh, okay. So these are just the bonus questions I like to include at the last of the podcast. You answer however you want. You can skip them, whatever. If you don't know, it's fine. Skip it. Go to the next one. It's just to test your brain a little bit, or pick your brain. So first question is, are we in a simulation?
I don't know, man. I think
that's fine. Any answers?
I hope so.
No right or wrong answer. You hope so?
Yeah.
Okay. If you had a magic wand, what would you do to make a difference in the world? If the magic wand was giving you the chance to make anything happen, what would you do? It was the one thing you can do.
Dang. I think I would, if I had a magic wand and I could make one difference, I would, I guess, like, you mean like what could I do to make the world better kind of thing?
Whatever. Yeah. It may not make the world better, but.
All right. So I got 2 answers for that. So
go ahead.
If I were going to make the world a better place, I would turn up everybody's level of compassion for each other, maybe 30%. Right?
That's good. Yeah.
And if I wanted to do something bad, then I would give myself the superpower of being able to, at will, cause some kind of minor inconvenience for anybody that I don't like, right? Whether it's like an itch on your back that you can't scratch, or like you got like a piece of kale stuck in your teeth and you can't get it out, like just some kind of minor inconvenience. That would be my superpower.
I'm going to make your asshole itch, sir.
Yep, exactly. In public.
Sorry, that's funny. All right, third question. What's our purpose? What do you think our purpose is?
Man, these are deep questions.
Yeah, sorry. That's why it's a challenge your brain. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, two answers. So answer number one is I have no idea. And then answer number two is I don't even think there is a purpose. I think it's just, we're just a bunch of people floating around on a rock in a cosmos.
I like that too. Cool. Train question. It's a scenario. I don't know if you heard of this. Everyone that is into philosophy usually hears about it. So you have one person in front of you, and you're on the ledge there, and there's train tracks right in front of you. There's a train coming, and on to your left or your right, wherever way you're looking, is 5 workers. They're all distracted. They can't hear anything, and you have the option to push this guy that's magically going to stop this train, or you don't push the guy. It's going to kill him, by the way. It's going to magically stop the train to kill him, or you don't push him, and it's going to just kill 5 people down there. What do you decide to do?
Push the one guy. Because I mean, I think like, it sucks to have that kind of choice, but I think if I pushed the one guy, I would feel terrible about it. And I would be up at, like every night at 3:00 in the morning, just like thinking like, Jesus, that was terrible. Why did that have to happen? But if I let the train kill 5 people, then I would still be up at 3:00 in the morning thinking about that. But I would be thinking about 5 people instead of 1.
Right. Yeah. That's cool, man. You answered that. Like some people usually have the problem with answering that question because they're like, oh, how does one, because it's too logical. They're like, how does one guy stop the one train and all that? I'm like, look, I didn't make up this question. I just like to ask it. All right. Last question is, if you can ask our maker or God, whatever it is that you believe in, or if whatever, it's a simulation we made ourselves. If you would like to ask that thing, whatever made us, one question, what would you like to ask?
What is the perfect jiu-jitsu game that nobody can stop?
So like like your strategy in jiu-jitsu, like, yeah.
Yeah, like what's the perfect jiu-jitsu game that nobody can stop that I can do when I'm 80 years old?
Yeah. Maybe you get that magic wand idea, make everyone that you go against their asshole scratches. Keep getting them. Sorry. All right, cool,
I'll
man.
keep that I'll just train with the gi on, and I'll keep the wand in my gi pocket.
Right. Everyone's gonna call you a muggle or whatever they call it in Harry Potter. All right, man. Appreciate you. So your Instagram or any social media you want to put out there so that people can find you, your websites, just whatever you want to share. So I'm gonna have that on the link, but
Awesome.
You can say it on here too. Where can people find you?
I can be found multiple places. So you can find us at 90daybjj.com. Same thing with Instagram, 90daybjj on Instagram, jujitsukandles.com, jujitsukandleco.com. Whoops. Sorry, Jiu-Jitsu Candle Co. on Instagram, and then jujitsukandles.com, the website. And then the Sloth Report on Instagram. You can also go on the Sloth Report if you want to sign up. You can go to joshvogelart.com. We have so many websites now that I'm mentioning them. I'm like, damn, like how many websites do we have? And then also Angie has Lil Coco on Instagram, which is her personal candle and soap brand as well, cool. Which is affiliated with Jiu-Jitsu Candle Co.
Right. Cool,
I think
man.
that's all we have. Yeah, we don't have any other companies.
Awesome, man. Thanks for being on my show. I appreciate you. And,
Thanks, man. It was good talking to you. And sorry if I interrupted you a couple times.
No. It's cool, man. It's not interruptions happen because we're not face to face, so the delay is kind of messed up. But again, man, I appreciate you. Keep doing you and your wife. I appreciate you and your wife doing the great things that you guys do. And looking forward to having Angie on if she's interested. I would like to have her on here too.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I can pick her brain as well. All right. Cool, man.
All right, thanks so much. We'll appreciate it, bud.
Awesome. Take it easy.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
Bye.